Hi, everyone. Welcome to Type Talks. Today we're here with Dario Nardi, and we're here to discuss the two-word names for each of the 16 types. And so, before we get started, I just want to let everyone know that Dario Nardi has a workshop happening in October, and it's in person. And so,
Mm.
it's happening October 20th to 26th. You can either attend one day or several, and it's in Arizona. It's called Young for Life, and it's a series of in-person experimental workshops. If you are interested, I'm going to have the links below. And he's also holding an information seminar with Personality Hacker on September 12th. So that'll be there too. Check it out. And so the first type we'll be covering today is the INTP. And so I'm curious if you can let us know a little bit about the two-word inspiration for that. And I know that you worked on this with Linda Berens too, so it just makes so much sense to start with
Mm.
INTP.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give INTP as an example, and then we can talk a little bit about why there are two names and how Linda and I came up with that, and felt that that was very important. Um, so yeah, many times on the internet, people they run into type somewhere, usually some kind of free forum about type, and they find a one-word name. And there people come up with different names for the types, and sometimes for my own type it's like mastermind or architect. I don't remember the ones that people come up for with INTP, but commonly around the internet. But the ones that Linda and I use were the designer theorizer. So why have two names, and what does it mean? Well, one is that one name is really hard to capture the whole type, even for like a slim majority of people. Maybe it'll capture, I don't know, two-thirds of people of that type. And then, across culture, there's also different meanings. And even more, like there's the person's experience of themselves. And then there's also other people's experience of that type. And INTP is a great type to start with. Not only is it Linda Berens type preferences, but Linda felt that this was a really good example where, from her point of view, she really saw herself as somebody who's constantly engaged in design and redesign. So that's part of, as you become an expert in something and you're interested in various theories, or maybe you're applying a theory to a problem that you're solving, could be a technical problem, interpersonal problem, whatever it is. There's this element of design, like trying to put together a strategy or a solution, or a category of solutions. And so she really saw herself as a lot of times as engaging in design. And that makes sense from a function point of view, especially because with all the introverted types, the dominant function is introverted, it's hidden from the world. So what people are going to see is extroverted intuiting, if they see that, by the way. I'll get to that in a moment. But then there's also this introverted thinking. And this is more, from the inside out. INTP is going to have this experience of doing introverted thinking with some extroverted intuiting and introverted sensing. And so from their point of view, they're doing a lot of TI stuff, but that TI stuff is invisible to other people, a lot of other people. And what they see instead is not the first word designer, they see theorizer, which is still NT-ish, but is more on the extroverted intuiting side of things. We could do it this way. And what if, that we defined it like this? And oh, here's an interesting rabbit hole to go down over here. And so what people are going to see from the outside is this idea of a theorizer, and somebody who just comes up with a lot of theories and sort of lives in the clouds and whatever. Whereas the INTP on the inside is more like, well, no, I see these really profound problems that deserve attention. And wherever they put their effort to, they're really like designing that framework, that process, system, model, whatever their exact terminology or approach. And that's, they feel like, no, I'm actually doing something pragmatic that is for a very like big picture and long term, and not just playing around with ideas. So that's the idea behind it. um and some of it also, we wanted to give two letter names because this idea of Johari window. that there are things that other people see about us that we don't see about ourselves, and vice versa.
Yeah, and so for these 2 word names, the first word is how the type sees themselves, and then the second word is how other people see that type too. And so you have both those angles, and that's a really good way of putting it, that people may not see it, but INTPs are designers. And so they're just designing a long-term theory to explain something eloquently.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious about INTJ. What is the two-word name for that? And what are your
Mhm.
thoughts on that?
So this one was interesting for me because Linda and I always engage in this process of getting feedback from other people when putting out products. So it's not just Linda and I sitting there. First of all, it was Linda and Chris Kyler and I, and maybe some other people as well, and like a round table working on it. And then we would send it out to people. And the conceptualizer director is the two word name for INTJ. And I'm like, I guess this approach we're taking is really true because I totally see the conceptualizer part, and I sort of see the director part, but I realize I don't see that very much. That's how other people experience more how I do things. So if I imagine a work environment, whether that's a corporate work environment or scientific or even something that's a little bit more like loose, creative, interpersonal, there is this external experience of the INTJ. I mean, we've read about it, right? We know that the INTJ has a vision. Maybe people don't know what that is. It's not communicated, but there is the sense energetically, the INTJ knows where he's going, and giving instructions. And there's the sense of time and task and the right way to do things and so on. And so I don't think of myself as a director, but I have to say when I work with other people, I have directions or I have direction and I make corrections around that. Um, and I try and be more process oriented, but it's still this element of a director that's sort of like very different from the theorizer with INTP. That director is more going to be crisp and practical, or at least have an application in mind. There's like a work orientation with it. Then as well as hierarchy. So that makes sense. It's a little bit more extroverted thinking. But then there's also the director is like on top of things with the view. So there's a little bit of introverted intuiting that's there. And then the conceptualizer is the first name, the first part of the name. I should really say the first part of the name because the words go together. I mean, multiple types could be a director all by themselves, but really, when we look at the names together, we get more of a feeling for what we're trying to get at. And the conceptualizer, this is how I experience myself. Like, it is said like, oh, INTJs appear very sure on the outside, but actually we're willing to entertain a lot of possibilities on the inside. And I see that. I mean, I have direction, but I'm also constantly adjusting. And I feel like I have a concept in mind, not a vision per se. I mean, there's a vision element there, but really it's like, actually, it's a whole bunch of floating concepts. And I'm waiting for them, or like want to just wake up one morning with like, okay, here is the central concept. Um, and the whole idea for INTJs is conceptualizing something. Like, oh, this is what we've observed. Here are all of our like giant database of abstract impressions. How can I conceptualize this? And it really is about having, as Joel and Antonio describe in Personality Hacker, about having like this viewpoints or perspectives. And so the concept looks sort of like a model, but it really is about a viewpoint, and that is, or having like not just perspectives but a meta perspective, and that's what a conceptualizer is about.
Yeah, finding the underlying theme and waiting for that to bubble up from the surface.
Yeah.
And so, well put, Dario. How about the INFJ?
Yeah, well, of course, INFJ makes sense as next. So foreseer developer is the two-word name, and again, this was it is a time when we were getting a lot of feedback from people, and this particular book, which came out in 1998, it came off of a lot of interviews that we did with people and all of that. And in some ways, INFJ was the type that took the longest. It was certainly when we were working on the 2-page descriptions, took the longest. Like they had a lot of input that they wanted to give on it. But mysteriously, like the 2-word names was not too difficult to get at. And so again, what we see with foreseer developer is similar to conceptualizer director, that the little bit more self experience side of things is going to be a little bit more introverted, intuiting the dominant function, which is the foreseer. So there is this, what is our potential? What is the talent? How can we develop it? How could things look like ideally? Where our purpose comes about, it comes from somewhere. There's something it's not just conceptualizing, which is very intuitive thinking. The foreseeing is more giving a lot of room, a lot of space for whatever it is that's going to come up. And then the developer is the part where, yes, we see more the extroverted feeling or the judging preference, where the INFJ is like, yeah, there's a song I'm going to develop, or a person, or an organization, whatever it is. There is this expression then of the sense of purpose and the ideals, but it's the expression. It's not just the only thing. They're not just saying that, like, oh yeah, I'm going to develop all of you. I mean, that's not what's going on. It's a continuing process. I mean, ideally, we might make all of these verbs, but that doesn't really sound great just as like a book thing. Foreseeing, developing, then that's not so much a name, but it is what's going on. Foreseeing and developing.
Yeah, and I can see that desire to wanna make it a verb because you wanna show that it's always in action and then that it's a movement rather than defining yourself in a way, so that I can
Mhm.
see the appeal of that. Alright, so thank you, Dario, and then that moves us on to INFP. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so let's do all of 4 IN types. Harmonizer, clarifier, and I believe that the first name is used a fair amount out in the type community. That there's a sense that INFPs are attracted to harmony, both internal harmony and external harmony, maybe as a reflection of the inner world and vice versa. Um, and what might come as a surprise is the clarifying part. Um, why is that? Like, what's going on? Well, some of it is that it goes back to this really sort of interesting phenomenon that Isabel Myers, INFP Preferences, is the one who developed the MBTI and made the letters and made all of that very accessible to the average population. And yet we know from experience and also some data that INFP is one of the types that when people identify as INFP, but they look back on their type discovery journey, they're like, oh yeah, I tried INTJ and INFJ and ISTJ, and then they name some other types that you'd be like, how did they think they were an ESTP? And then they sort of arrive at INFP, and then even then they might say, yeah, I'm still sort of holding that lightly. Um, so there's this continuous process. One of the themes of INFP is, if both for themselves and others, is returning to the core of the self. Like, what is of most value is like, who am I, and who are you? And even something which seems a little bit far afield, like on the creative side, like the love of sort of mysteries and mystery. I don't mean literally the mystery genre, but this love of mystery in general is because there's the opportunity to clarify what's going on with that. And so oftentimes, like INTP, who's engaged in theorizing word stuff, is that INFP is doing a word stuff in a conversation. This is what other people see. And INFP is asking questions. And then they make a statement somewhere that it first seems sort of out of the blue. And then you're like, oh, okay, they had a point there. Like they were getting somewhere with it. And so this might be a surprise for INFPs to hear at times. What people experience from them is this clarifying process. Who are you? What is important to you? How can we help you? Um, how can we balance things, clarifying what is your story, what is all of that, and then the harmonizing is sort of the goal to get there. And as an introvert, of course, the harmonizing sounds very much like introverted feeling, and harmonizing is not going to mean something that's like completely solid. um it's going to have a duality to it. And the clarifying doesn't mean we're going to just get down to like, oh, it's exactly like, it's not introverted sensing. There's still a strong element of extroverted intuiting, but it's this process of asking questions and exploring in order to clarify.
Yeah, I could definitely see that question asking or trying on things to see what is the core of one's identity. And so that moves us to ENTJ. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Let's jump to a very different type. And so now in talking about extroverts, we are again are going to face the sort of question of what people see that's a little bit more on the inside, or the introverted function, versus the outside, which tends to be a little bit more of the extroverted function. So ENTJ, Linda Berens, and I call this the strategist mobilizer. So the strategist is the introverted intuiting part. It's still NT-ish, just like designer theorizer has this NT element to it, no matter what. So strategist mobilizer has this NT element. So the strategizing that's there is introverted intuiting, and it's for some purpose. And it isn't necessarily a single direction, but it's about like, yeah, how are we going to marshal these resources? How are we going to build this company? How are we going to raise capital? How are we going to help this person overcome their lifelong health issue? Whatever it is that the ENTJ's object of interest. Um, but what other people see on the outside is the ENTJ's constant activity around mobilizing resources, where even people are resources. So it's talking to people and making connections and reading about things and having discussions and physically going somewhere and investigating. Um, the hiring people, just even figuring out like a basic, oh, I need to build a website. Like, let me build a website. So there's this action element to it, which makes sense because the ENTJ has extroverted sensing as third. So they have some like can do attitude that goes along with the extroverted thinking. Now, we could say like ESTJ is a mobilizer also. We have a better word for ESTJ. But in the context of being strategizing and mobilizing together, we really see like the two sides of the type come together. And it's sort of like, I don't want to use the example of a person in their shadow, but like two sides of a coin. We want there are necessarily two sides. And when we see both of them, we get a fuller picture. And that's often, and the mobilizing, by the way, can be abstract. It can be like developing talent, or selecting people, hiring people that will maximize both their leverage, their talents, and also what they can do for the ENTJ's endeavors. Don't want to just pigeon them into business, because that's not the case.
Yeah, and so you highlighted this element of delegation that they have, and that quite differentiates them from the INTJs in a sense, because INTJs usually like, I want to do everything by myself. There's more of a liberalness with mobilizing that ENTJs have.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's very true, and sometimes it's because I'm the only person I think who knows how to do this, because I'm the only person who can conceptualize what I'm doing. And then part of it is just that introverted feeling. I'm going my own way, and ENTJ is not pulled in that same way. They're much more pragmatic in that sense about, yeah, like this person fits the job role pretty well. Like, let's hire them, or let's work with them, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and an ENTJ is also more likely to quickly get involved in someone else's life too if they need that kind of assistance or help.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like, "You need advice, let me tell you what advice you need." And so, let's tackle ENTP, and what are your thoughts on that type?
Okay. So this was a type that, again, we got good feedback from ENTPs. I myself was not 100% happy with it. I got to be honest. I'm not unhappy with it. I was just like not 100%, but I trust the process of vetting it with people. So I'm like, okay, and I can see where it works. So it's this inventor explorer, and the only thing I would do differently is I would say, uh, is it explorer inventor or inventor explorer? But that's okay. That sort of fits with the NTP. You know, they're not committed to one way or another usually anyway. So it's absolutely fine. So on the one hand, there's going to be this element of exploration, which is the extroverted intuiting, and this is what usually um, the other people are going to see. Oh, the person is exploring different things. They're exploring different job opportunities. They're exploring different relationships. They're exploring different theories and ideas. They're exploring different religious devotions. They're exploring different ways to organize their day. Whatever it is that there's a lot of, and it could be literal exploration. Also, like my aunt who has ENTP preferences is a travel agent for many years, like high-end travel, and really loves actually traveling. Because why would you be a travel agent unless you're traveling and you get all the perks of it? And plus, if you travel a lot, you can give advice to other people. So why not? Um, but in fact, even though that's like such a strong element, there's this other side to it, which is the inventor. And so here is more the introverted thinking coming in and saying like let's organize this. And I want to use my aunt again as an example. So in many years of being a travel agent, um and not just conventional, like, oh, you call and it's like a couple going on their honeymoon or something, although she did do that. It'd be things like, no, we're organizing a special trip for people through all of Europe, or we're having a troupe of acrobats going to London, and they need to be in 5 different places throughout England and Scotland, and what's going to happen with that. So, and making that work. And one of the things that she invented was 9 traveler types, because she'd observed in her experience the patterns of behavior. And eventually it came to a book which she calls Travel with Others Without Wishing They'd Stayed Home. And there's her extroverted feeling popping in there. Yeah, you want to travel with people, hopefully that's a huge test of relationships. But she felt that would help a lot of people know what their traveler type is. And those don't correspond to the personality types or Enneagram as we know them. They're very specific to issues about travel, like whether you're the kind of person who likes culture or shopping or physical adventure, or like physical activity, but not actually adventure. No jumping off of bridges with bungee, all of that. Just chilling at the beach, swimming, and more. More options. And so there was this really nice, like, inventive quality to it. And the same. So how does she manage so much during a day? Especially as an ENTP who doesn't want to be bothered with all these little details. Of course, she has a system, and the system is really very, of her own invention. And that's a combination, a little bit of introverted thinking and introverted sensing. They both have to come in there. Their standard ways to do things. Sixth function, that's a whole other topic. I think sixth function is important. But yeah, that the inventing is what comes out of the lifelong learning and the exploration. And combined with the introverted thinking, which is looking for solutions or looking for understanding and explanation.
Yeah, I think explorer is a good word for ENTPs. I find all the EPs have an element of being an explorer to them, and the inventiveness adds the ENTP angle of the extroverted intuition, and that's always inventing as they go too,
Mm.
by TI creating that system behind the thing. But they're not as dead set on designing as the INTPs are,
Right.
in that they're okay if they don't know the answer yet, because the exploration is the fun part for them. They don't
Yes.
need an answer. And so that brings us to ENFP. And so
Mm.
what are your thoughts there?
So this is the discoverer advocate. Um, and the advocacy part is from the introverted feeling, and the discoverer part, or discovering, advocating, the discoverer part is more the extroverted intuiting side. And You know what? A lot of times, I think with ENFPs, what people see sort of depends on the flavor of the ENFP, which I didn't want to say this right at the beginning, but I think this is a sort of a developmental thing because folks are probably familiar with the model that has like what is it? Well, there was like tender and assertive. People adding a fifth letter. Isabel
Big
Myers.
5?
Hmm?
Oh, Big 5?
No, no, not Big Five. No, no. So there's models of type, the archetypes, EISNTFJP, TA, or CD. Isabel Myers came up with C and D, which is comfort, discomfort. Um, and I think no matter how we want to slice it or say analytic, holistic, that actually we can say with the two names, a person might associate more, even if they're an introvert, with the external presentation, especially if they're more analytical or coming because the society is more analytical, or ours is, or they just grew up in an environment that emphasized that. So there are definitely INTJs that I've met, or ENFJs or ENTPs or whatnot, that are, because of their development, say INTJs, there's this version which is a little bit more OCD and a little bit tough and maybe rigid. That's more the director. And then there's a version which is more soft and friendly and a little bit scattered, and that's more the conceptualizer. And so there's a general tendency, what's on the inside, what's on the outside, and what other people see and what we see in ourselves. But there's a third piece, which is also developmental, like what we associate with most. And so with Discover Advocate, there are some ENFPs who are a little bit more, uh, and I would say, generally speaking, I find this for younger ENFPs, like in their teens and 20s, but not necessarily. They're more advocates. Like, it's very clear why they're there and what they're about. And they say it right up front. They're going to be like, I'm building a company that's all about helping people design creative solutions to things. And they're an advocate for creative solutions, and they're an advocate for the people that they work with, and they're an advocate for creativity, and they're an advocate for improving society. And so their values are more clear. They're not doing extroverted feeling because they're not working off of what other people's feedback is to them. They just have this very clear FI sense of like, this is why I'm here and this is what I'm doing. And then some of that is also the extroverted thinking comes in and makes it, they just like say what's on their mind, maybe somewhat bluntly sometimes. What really is going on, though, is we can guess, is more the extroverted intuiting, though, that it's the discovering element, the discoverer. Um, that a little bit like how INFP likes mysteries, ENFP loves discovery, discovering, having perceptions of things, discovering new and interesting people, discovering that there's another meaning to this, or like three other meanings, discovering happiness. There is this constant re-engagement to discover, and maybe not rediscover in terms of going deeper, because they're not introverts, but there is this desire to like discover over here and discover over there. And at some point they're usually like, wow, I need to leave my hometown or my country or my job or my relationship or whatever it is in order to discover more. And so there really is this very strong theme of discovery. But if we just said discoverer, we would miss the like why they're there. What is the meaning? What is the purpose? And that's where the advocacy comes in. And they can make good media people, because that's essentially like what a media and advertising person is we're advocating for our product or our service. Um, and they're usually good at convincing people. So advocate doesn't mean standing on a podium necessarily. ENFPs are great at being Tom Sawyer kind of advocates, where at the end of the day you're like, how did I end up doing all of the work? And the ENFP just stood there and told stories and was entertaining. They advocated for this job and you did it.
Yeah, and that's well put. And I also see ENFPs advocating for causes or people that are the underdogs. So if they see you having an unjust situation, they might immediately step up to rectify the situation for you, in a sense.
Yes, yes. Whereas I feel like INFPs also fight for underdogs, but just as um, INTJs tend to go more alone in their things, INFP tends to be more a little bit more long term and not just like instantly I'm going to stand up and say something, but gee, this interaction that I have listened to and observed, like this makes me think maybe I want to learn about it and get more involved.
Mm.
And then that's their then they are engaging as they do that in a clarifying and harmonizing process rather than just like butting in and saying something.
Yeah, an INFP, this is a stereotypical example, but, like, more likely to wear, like, the shirt that says, like, their cause or something, or an ISFP, rather than, like, immediately, instantly defending it in the moment. They will do that too, but it's more lone wolfy and more quiet and until it has to be shown.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. And then let's go to ENFJ. What are your thoughts there, Dario?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the envisioner mentor. So envisioning and mentoring. So like ENTJ, there is this element of introverted intuiting, which is more the envisioning part. And then there is more what people see on the outside, and the more the extroverted feeling is the dominant function is the mentoring. And that is also combined with some third function extroverted sensing. So the feeling and sensing together. It's not just like, okay, I'm going to wait until people come to me and then I'm going to give them some advice or something. Is mentoring is something active. And mentoring doesn't need to be literal in the sense that, oh, I have interns now and I'm mentoring them. Although that can be the case. My mom was ENFJ preferences and she really, really loved having interns come in and learn about what she was doing. And she loved the idea of mentoring them. I mean, that was very rewarding for her. The mentoring can also occur through something like a book or a radio show or through music, as long as it's communicating something important to people and not just communicating a message for people to receive a nod and say, yes, thank you, but actually grow with it. And so that's where the mentoring is. So the FE is not just about like, oh, I'm going to shepherd everyone to this box. They're like, no, I want to see you grow. And so that's no, that's sort of what's happening behind the scene is the ENFJ having that natural draw to be mentoring. I think in this case it's interesting because many times ENFJs are in positions where yeah, I mean sometimes the mentor is an official position in a job or it's a part of a role you have. Like, oh yeah, I work at this company and I'm in mid-level somewhere and I happen to be someone that also mentors. So I think sometimes people don't see the ENFJ because usually that's not the case. The ENFJ just starts mentoring, and then maybe people don't see that right away. The envisioner part is what I think can come across with just a little bit of time talking to them as they switch gears from like mentoring, and you're going to ask them, but what's behind all of this? What's your story? What's your vision? And they're going to give you their vision and they're very clear on that. Is not like INFJ or INTJ who are like, yeah, you just opened Pandora's box. Like, where do I begin? ENTJ has the strategy, or they're strategizing. ENFJ has this envisioning, and they wake up and they have this inspiration and they write it down and they have this master plan. And this is what we're going to do, or this is how it can look. This is what the solution will be like. And so it is this not this like all over the place every day all day long kind of introverted intuiting. It's more focused, and often the envisioning is around and with other people, of course.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So the ENFJ can also have that element that the ENFP has of be doing things with people or involving people in the process.
Mm.
Or and
Yeah,
so
yes.
yeah, well put, Dario. And so let's mosey our way down to let's go to ISTJ, and I'm curious about your thoughts there.
Okay. um So ISTJ is planner, inspector, or inspector. So planning and inspecting. Um, I realize like planning is not. It doesn't sound like the most exciting word. And I want to emphasize that planning doesn't mean I'm getting out a sheet of paper and my day consists of just writing down plans. Like that's not. I mean, yes, ISTJs do that and they like doing that. And I can sort of relate as INTJ, like, yeah, I get that. But this planning here is not just about drawing up plans or steps, it's about being prepared. And so that planning is an essential part of being prepared. Like prepared for what? Like what are the different contingencies that we need to be prepared for? What are the elements that we need to have in place? So then when something happens, whether that something is an accident or retirement or hurricane or an unexpected birth, whatever it is, a loss of a job, gaining a promotion, the ISTJ is prepared because in a way mentally they've been planning for this. And this is what's going on in their mind, and this is more their first person experience. Um, what other people tend to see is not what's going on internally for them, but the inspector. And the inspector is like comes over, sort of like monitoring and looking at what you're doing and being like, yeah, that's not good. Um, and I remember this experience way, way, way back when. I don't even remember how old I was then, maybe 22. And I took on a job position um, at the Holden Company. Probably doesn't even exist anymore. It's like an investment firm, banking firm, something like that. And they had very much flattened their organization and gotten rid of a lot of middle people. And so it was very interesting that I had very close communication with both an immediate boss who I had already learned type, and I thought, oh wow, he's like totally stereotypical ISTJ, very stereotypical ISTJ. And then above him, his boss, who was one of the executives in the company, because like I said, it's a very flattened organization. She was an ENTP. And we had already encountered, like, I didn't see the ENTP that often, but a couple of times we talked in the elevator. And she even told me explicitly that she had this technique of talking really fast. And if the person could keep up with all of the ideas that she was saying, then she approved of them. Um, ISTJ gave me a job. No, mind you, I was just like somebody for hire through one of those job companies, and it happened to be a long-term assignment, like over the summer or something. And God, I'm never going to do that again, by the way. So I was supposed to staple like collate all of these elements and turn them into reports and staple them nicely and all of that. And the ISTJ came by and he looks at my work as I got like 5 or 10 minutes in because I wanted to make sure I was doing it right and so on. And he's like, but still, I was like 10 minutes in and I'm pretty efficient with it. And he's like, oh, the staples are a little too big. Like, maybe if you could take them out and put in smaller staples. And fortunately, the ENTP came by a few minutes later and she's like, oh, that's so stupid. Just ignore that. She says, I'll just tell him that they look fine. And I just remember that moment, like so sunk in my mind that that's what other people experience. I have no idea what the ISTJ's reasoning was. He is a thinking type, and I know there's introverted sensing there, which has this impression that staples should be a certain size for a certain project. But he never shared like what was going on in his mind about it. There was simply this inspection, and that I failed the inspection, and that was it. And so I think that as with all the types, we want to be aware of both sides of ourselves and not take them for granted. And I don't know how many ISTJs are really aware other people see this inspector side, that whether it's a ticket inspector or even somebody who's like a literary editor or whatever it is. People don't always like being inspected.
Yeah, there is that element of scrutinizing things to make sure that they are how they should be. And so, yeah, ISTJs, that really fits. So,
Yeah. I mean, now that I think it doesn't have to be rigid like that. I mean, my dad had ISTJ preferences. And by the end of his life, I mean, for the last few years, he was very much like he would inspect something and be like, are people having fun or not? And if they're not having fun, then this isn't right. So his idea of what was like the proper thing changed significantly over the course of 81 years. And I imagine, all ISTJs then have that potential to be a different kind of inspector.
Exactly, yeah, and it also depends on how close you are to the ISTJ too. They might be more lenient with people they don't know that well, but if they're in charge of you or you're in their inner circle, you might see the inspector side show up more.
Yes, yeah.
And let's go to ISTP.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a couple examples in my life of ISTPs to work off of, and I did at the time. And Linda and I felt very, very comfortable. This was one of the first types we did, analyzer operator. Their experience of things is that they're analyzing stuff all the time. Um, Many times it has a very physical quality to it. I'm just amazed. I was with an ISTP friend who's like a landscaper and horticulturalist, but we just happened to be in like a pizzeria, where they have those like fancy ovens and wood stove ovens and all of that. And I was sort of wondering, like, we started talking about like how the kitchen was structured or arranged. And he explained how everything worked, not because he had ever worked in a pizzeria or knew anything about them, but he's like, you can tell it's like goes there like this from the pipe there because that's happening and it needs to get rid of the heat this way. And I mean, I followed along. I'm INTJ, not so far away from him, but I wasn't standing there analyzing like how everything worked. And yet ISTPs are very good at analyzing how everything works, and actively solving problems, many times concrete, physical, or at least practical problems. It could be something abstract, like in computer programming, or even something interpersonal, but they're analyzing what's going on in the situation. My stepdad, at times, I'd be like, oh my God, it's dinner. Like, can we stop doing the problem solving? Like, even I have a limit to the problem solving, and because he's analyzing stuff. Now, what people see, ISTPs, on the outside is not you doing the analysis. What they see is you operating stuff, which is why the mechanic is like a stereotypical word for ISTP. Yeah, the mechanic analyzes things, but they're also fixing it physically and they're operating the vehicle. And um, yeah, I have to say, every at least male ISTP I've known loves cars and had multiple cars under their name. Just the idea of operating something, probably not true in every country, but in America, not a surprise. Same thing. I remember having this chance to ride like little Vespas or motorbikes in Greece, and I looked at those and I'm like, there is no way I'm getting on that. Like, I'm gonna die. Because if you've ever seen people in the Mediterranean, how they drive, like my brain, my introverted intuiting was immediately like, yeah, that's a no go for me. I would love to try it sometime, but this is the wrong location. Um, but I very much trust my brother. I just got on the back of the bike and let him drive and ride the bike. And he managed to avoid two or three accidents along the way, not caused by him, but other people just driving really crazy. And I'm like, oh, thank God he's such a good operator. And so that is what many times, just letting ISTPs out there know, that is what other people see you doing, and they don't see all of the analysis that you're doing continuously behind the scenes.
Yeah, that makes sense. They are very good at troubleshooting, and in fact, even an ISTP with a line of code will be like, why does that break there? I don't understand it." And it's almost like it bothers them until they can actually figure it out fully. It's like, "Oh, that's why it happened. Okay, it makes sense now." And so, let's make our way to ISFP. What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that type?
Certainly. Well, we had an ISFP in our design group for this project, so we got front row feedback continuously, and I felt it was really nice because this ISTP Chris we were working with was not the stereotypical dude. I'm a surfer. I love dogs or cats or whatever it is, like, and lounging around. And no, I mean, he was very driven and organized and probably dominant subtype ISFP. So that was a good counterpoint that we got pushed back compared to David Kiersey's, sort of classic portrait of ISFP, which is creative but also disorganized and all of that. So composer, producer. And I think some people will be like, well, I know an ISFP. I don't think she produces anything. Um, And that's because a lot of times what they're producing or what they're doing is a lot of um it's within their area of what it is that they do. So it's either practical hands-on things like for the house or kids or something like that, or it's like I'm a musician, I make music, or I'm an artist, I produce art. So they're producing stuff. Um, and there is the strong on the other side, introverted intuiting and extroverted thinking, sort of like the opposite type that is going to push towards that production and the extroverted sensing of like actually outputting something. So an ISFP who does fashion design, and I happen to know one actually too, one retired, that they're not just theorizing about the different things, like they're hands-on creating stuff and all the time and producing stuff, and some of it goes in the trash, and some of it is like, well, that was an interesting inspiration, and a bit of it is part of, I know an ISFP who's a painter, and just like, yeah, let's do a whole I want to say exposition, but that's not the right word, exhibition, um and just like have a series of like 12 paintings or whatever it is. Like once ISFP decides what they're going to do and commits to it, the introverted feeling commits to it, boom, they produce stuff a lot. When they haven't committed, there's no production there. So I think that's sometimes where the word and the name can be confusing, and why some people might be like, yeah, I don't know about this ISFP. It's like you just haven't, they're not in the right mood to produce right now. That's all. But when you get them in the right spot, wow, can they produce? What they see of themselves doing, they're like, okay, I'm producing stuff, but that's not is very important to them. What's important is the composition side of it, the introverted feeling, a little bit of introverted intuiting, a little bit of extroverted sensing, but there's this composer element. And I don't mean like a classical music composer, although conceivably it could be that. It's composing in the sense of like, oh, I'm going out to this certain party tonight. Like, what kind of outfit do I want to wear that like really fits my mood and the mood of the occasion, and is going to sort of be impactful and fun, but not over the top? Like, that's a really great assignment to give to an ISFP. Like, could you help me with that? ISFP is going to be like, "Whoosh, oh yeah, I know exactly what it is that you need. Um, Maybe not specifically with clothing, but in general, there is this element of pulling elements together and playing around with them sort of tactically and trial and error. And all of the SPs are about trial and error and then coming up with something. And to them is what they're doing. And even if there's doing something very physical, like let's go back to surfing as a stereotypical example, or martial arts, ISFP martial artists, they're composing, and it's composing the moves. It's not following all these lines of like branching. If I do this and my opponent does that, then I need to do this other thing. Like, no, they're going to lose already if they're thinking about it. And they're not really ones to memorize a bunch of complex things. So it really is about composition in the moment, and that can be physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, ideally a combination of all of those together.
Yeah, it's like the producing comes when they figured out what they wanna compose, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Alright, yeah. It's not just extroverted thinking that's responsible for creating, like, extroverted sensing can also really go in there and just do it in the moment. It's now or never. And so, ISFJs, what are your thoughts on
Yeah.
them?
Absolutely. So I feel this is a two-word combination that people will immediately recognize. They're going to be like, "Oh yeah," and I totally know when we cross from one word to the other. So that's protector, supporter, and I think it fits very well with this sort of ISFJ appearance. Oh yeah, on the surface, the ISFJ is very friendly and compliant and supportive. And can I get you some tea, or hear some words of consolation or a compliment or whatever it is? And then you cross into this certain point, past a certain point, and they become very protective. And so this supportive element, they're not just being supporters to be nice. I mean, it's nice to be nice, but that can't be your reason for going through life. We're only getting them the extroverted feeling What we're missing then is from the outside, just the supporter. We need to go to the inside, that introverted sensing that there's something to protect. And this is actually why they're supporting is part of the protecting. And so there's some infrastructure there. There's traditions. There is the workplace's workflow and procedures. There are the important relationships and the circle of friends and in the family. And so, yeah, being nice and agreeable is part of it. But really, it all comes back to, in their mind, all the time about protecting what is worthwhile and what is of value and what is comfortable and familiar and makes life better, and protecting that. And that can mean like protecting social status. It could mean protecting finances. It could mean really protecting anything. I mean, that's why we use sort of these broad words. But yeah, I think this is a type where many times people who know type, they've known an ISFJ and they're like, oh yeah, I definitely know when I cross that line from getting nice support to like all of a sudden the ISFJ was like, no, you can't do that, because they're doing this protecting along with it. And that really is the biggest piece for them.
That makes sense. That is quite the two sides of the ISFJ. That very
Yeah.
supportive, warm side, and the part of you that wants to protect you as well, even if it means like being skeptical of things that could hurt you potentially.
Yeah.
And so let's go to ESFP and shake things up there. And so, what are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, so ESFP, let's scroll down here. Have the book online. By the way, if folks want to find this, they can find them in Decode Your Personality. Although I don't talk about the names in such detail. And they can find them in the 16 personality types descriptions for self-discovery, which is a nice slim brown book that they can find on Amazon for like, I don't know, $9, something like that. So ESFP is motivator presenter. Um, and having a ESFP stepmom, I could definitely relate to this. What is their experience and what is other people's experience of them? So sometimes the word is used for ESFP like entertainer or maybe some kind of adventurer, like not that word, but something sort of like that. I think entertainer is one of those words that they have out there. Um, I've gotten pushback from European ESFPs. They're like, yeah, I think that describes American ESFPs, but they don't necessarily see themselves as being the entertainers. What we do see from the outside, usually, though, is this element of presenting, and presenting can include a performance. So I don't mean just like, oh, standing in front of some PowerPoint slides and giving a presentation. That might be it. It could be a sales presentation. It could also be thinking about, what is my presentation? How am I presenting myself on a date? How am I presenting myself in this foreign country that I'm going to as a tourist or as a co-worker for new colleagues that I'm meeting? What kind of presentation am I putting on? You could also be creating something. So if they happen to do art or like some kind of performance type of thing, like gymnastics, for example, or dance, that also is presenting. It's a kind of presentation. Um, and so there is this element. Maybe people haven't quite thought about it this way, but it's not about entertaining you. It really is about like putting on a presentation in some way. This is why an ESFP that I know for a number of years, actually several of them, were event organizers, because they're basically, event organizing is a form of presenting stuff. What they see themselves on the inside, though, was a lot more purposeful, because if you ask them, like, why are you doing this? Like, their answer is not just being, oh, I entertain people. I mean, they might say, yeah, I want people to have a good time, but then that starts to get into something a little bit deeper, and we get into that name motivator. And I think it goes back to the sort of very basic way that ESFP wants to bring people out of their shell and experience life. And that's often, like, when we say motivator, like motivating you to do what? Motivating you to get off your duff and do something, or get off your duff and have fun, and or like make a success of yourself, or find love or whatever it is. There was a really great opening to a movie, and I knew about type then, and I don't remember the name of the movie, but Dolly Parton was the main character. And in the first few years, first few minutes of the movie, she's been married for several years, and she's just like, her husband is not even home, like he's off working or traveling or something, and she's just like, I'm so bored with my life. Not bored in like a spoiled way. She's just like, why am I waiting around for somebody else? Like, what am I doing for myself? And so most of the movie is really about her like getting off of her own butt and getting motivated and doing something and making a life for herself, which I feel is very Dolly Parton. I mean, we see that in multiple things that she does. So there is the side of like helping people, express themselves and to come into themselves, and again sort of that introverted intuiting fourth function hidden potential of like, how can you have a healthier body and be more fit, or how can you have better relationships or make more money and have more enjoyment of your job or whatever it is. And that when you underlie that motivation, they're like, oh yeah, I mean, there is that introverted feeling. It's about like, yeah, making a better world for myself and other people.
There's this motivating component to them too because they're good at seeing people and getting them to want to, and so they can get themselves off of their butt, but also realize that how to motivate other people to also do that, and so very much so. Alright,
Gotcha.
so how about ESFJs? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. ESFJ, facilitator, caretaker. Um, and we'll start with the second one first, which is people, what we often see is taking care or caretaking. The caretaking is usually something quite active, and so it's like taking care of colleagues, friends, family members, kids, students, whatever it is, constituents, followers. There's this element of like, yeah, I'm helping to take care of things. The people in our neighborhood, they're going to be in an organization, a charity, and they want it to be the neighborhood to be better, or maybe they're part of the PTA for the school, and they want the students and the families and so on. We see this caretaking element to them. It can also mean I have the sick person that I'm taking care of, but let's not limit ourselves to that because that's like a very particular case that happens. ESFJ would prefer to usually not be saddled with that like anybody else. Like they want to really show their potential too. And as part of caretaking, that doesn't just mean helping. It can mean doing practical things, managing stuff for the person, coming up with ideas, giving supportive words, suggesting stuff that they could do, maintaining also a sense of like a continuity, for example. Um, and that's what takes us, that last one, to the first word, facilitator, which I think maybe surprises people. Because really, unlike ISFJ, where I think a lot of people in the type community they're like, yeah, we can totally see when we move from one point to the next. With ESFJ, I think what people get like 90% of the time is caretaker. And very rarely are they going to see the facilitator unless they get to know the person. And the facilitator is that element is there. And I want to step back and think for a moment about SJ types in general and just introverted sensing. Why facilitate, and what are we facilitating? Well, you want people to have like a good experience. So the way I think of facilitator is either like a workshop, like a training workshop in a company, or if I go to like a religious or the spiritual experience and there's a facilitator there. Facilitator could be a minister. The facilitator could be somebody who serves ayahuasca. It could be like a whole range of things. But the point of facilitating is to maintain a space and to encourage a process that helps people move forward in their lives. That it is necessarily, it's almost like, and I find it so funny when I hear this from intuiting types, and I now I can say it too, having enough experience in life to appreciate it. Ritual is very important. Ritual is part of the experience of life. Ritual is what creates containers, and it is in a container, like in a pot. I have potted plants around me that allows the plants to grow indoors. In order to be civilized and grow at the same time, we need facilitation. Like those that they have to go together, like the hand in hand. They need to go together. Who now maybe they don't do this well, or maybe they're actually very mature and learn how to do it very well, but who really is drawn to that underneath? When you talk to ESFJ, yeah, of course, a really classic example is kids. The ESFJ is there, and their kids, and let's not call them potted plants, but their kids, you want them to be civilized, and you also want them to grow into their potential. And so you facilitate that. It's not just taking care and making sure there's sandwiches on the table or whatever it is. Yes, that's important, but it really is about like this stepping back for a moment and understanding the continuity of the human experience. And so yeah, kids are a great example, but it really could be with anybody. It could be with a company, with society, a neighborhood, a school, workplace, whatever.
Well said. And the facilitating element is this hosting where they can remember the details of you too, like your
Mm.
name or how you're doing in life, like what you're concretely up to, and how you feel about it, and just like creating a warm atmosphere for people to get along in.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
and so ESTJs, can you tell
Yeah,
me a bit
yeah,
about that?
absolutely. Implementer supervisor. What other people see is the supervising. This is a little bit different than inspecting. ESTJ doesn't do so much inspecting, they just supervise. And that's somewhere between the very high level person. So supervisor is like not as abstract as directing. And in fact, it could be people were assigned roles by somebody else, and their role is simply like in a company, it's a supervisor. They're the visor visioning super above. So they're looking from above. And are you generally doing what you're supposed to be doing? Are you busy? Is production happening according to plan? Like all of that. Very, very classic ESTJ. Um, and I don't think anybody has a problem with that, like what the meaning of it is, because that's how companies work and factories and all of that. um what they see themselves doing, however, and I can say from my experience with my grandmother as an example, is implementing, because they know that nothing stays in place. So the point is not to just supervise and sort of like, yeah, you just stand there, and it's supervising by itself is sort of like observing and giving some feedback and uh like managing the process, but there's more than the process just like flowing continuously for infinity. Is like you're implementing something. So the ESTJ comes in, and I know this is an example. So at one point, like my grandmother was involved in like just Italian American cultural affairs and society, and so she's like has these ideas about how to improve it. The third function, extroverted intuiting, generates some ideas, and she's going to implement those in order to make it a better, stronger, more successful organization. Of course, she's going to supervise along the way, but from her point of view, what she's doing is implementing improvements in order to make something happen. Now, sometimes with an ESTJ, it can just be about things like bottom line profit or whatever. And then we get into the sort of ugly situation where they're implementing a plan which involves a lot of belt tightening and not paying attention to customer experience or the worker satisfaction. And they're implementing something which is like a fatter bottom line for the investors. Everybody else is unhappy. But from their point of view, they're implementing what they're supposed to be implementing. And, in America, it's the law that companies must be doing things and only things that lead towards more profit for investors. If you have a private company, you can do whatever you want. But when you have investors, so from the implementer supervisor's point of view, what they're implementing could be extremely altruistic and humanitarian, but it could also be very cutthroat and baseline capitalistic, like whatever it is. Um, A new plan is given for teachers in a school, a new way to teach. They're going to implement that, or they're going to supervise people implementing it. And many implementations involve a lot of people doing something. ESTJs are drawn to the organization as a unit, or the company, the platoon, like whatever it is, the family unit. They're supervising what's going on with that. And but from their point of view, they're always implementing something. There's a building element to it that's happening.
Yeah, I could see that. It's like ESTJs and the EJ types, they're quick implementers, and I could see how the ESTJ, especially for efficiency, will want to implement something. It's like, oh, that person could be doing that faster. They could take, instead of 4 seconds picking up the straws, if they just pick them up all at the same time, it'll take 2 seconds. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a little bit also like I don't know if ESTJs are behind this or not, but how it's possible now to, oh God, what was this design? It was terrible. So it's somebody designed a toilet seat that slopes at an angle slightly, and apparently after 5 minutes of sitting, it becomes unbearably uncomfortable to the leg muscles. So you really can only sit on the toilet for like 5 minutes. And that was to deliberately design in order to ensure employees get back to their desks quickly.
ooh,
I'm not saying every ESTJ is going to approve of that, but they get it. You
yeah.
know, they're like, "Yeah, I could see how another ESTJ would be, like, totally on board with that, and we're gonna replace all of the bathrooms in our company, we're gonna have this, and that will increase worker efficiency." And the workers soon enough will realize that it's in their best interest, and who needs more than 5 minutes anyway?
Oh my. And
So, I mean, development comes into it. So, I encourage people to consider there's also lovely humanitarian ESTJs that would be like, "Absolutely not."
mortified by that too.
Yes, they would be mortified also. Yes.
Makes sense. And then ESTPs. Tell me a bit about this type.
Yeah, so last but not least is promoter executor. Very very action oriented words here. And by the way, I should mention not all of the words are in the dictionary as legally official words. Um I mean, analyzer operator of course is for ISTP is there, and composer producer, but some of them I think instead of executor, we're not talking about executors of a will or something like that. I'm talking about, and we're not talking about somebody who performs executions either. So that's that's not also ESTP. It's just executor, somebody who executes stuff. So promoting and executing. Um, ESTP really is so much. I mean, what we see on the outside is about execution, is about getting things done and getting them quickly done. My uncle ESTP, like, I mean, unless he wants it to go slowly, nothing is ever fast enough. Even at like 80 something, it's still not fast enough. There really is like, let's make it happen. Let's take charge. Here's like tactically the priorities we're going to put in place. Oh, some negotiating is needed. Okay, let's do that. But like, let's get it done. Um, what they see themselves doing, though, is remember, they are perceiving types and they have a dominant perceiving function. And they're like, no, I'm more chill than that. Like, yeah, I like to get stuff done, but I'm not a machine. Like, ESTP wants to have fun. Like, if you ask them, they're like, no, I mean, if we're not having fun, it's boring, is just because it's slow or uninteresting or like nothing is happening. It's sleepy. Um, if we execute something, then go ahead with it, make it happen. Then I mean, things are going to be better, right? They're going to be more enjoyable. So from their point of view, they're a lot of times what they're doing is promoting something, that they're promoting their business, they're promoting their brand. And we have a presidential candidate and former president. Actually, we have multiple former presidents who are ESTPs. They love promoting themselves. Go back and read about all of them. Um, it is just something that is there. It could also be promoting their company. It could be promoting their product. Um, it could be something like promoting yoga as a path towards wellness. It could be something spiritual too. And so what they see is like, I'm doing this stuff and getting people involved, and like, yeah, let's have a yoga retreat and make it a little bit high end, but still affordable. You know what would really make it work is a great location. So I'm just like imagining out loud. Let's put it in the Mediterranean on an island. And we're going to have like a really good chef there, and people are going to have a great experience. And then they're like, okay, let's make this happen, and let's do the promotion that's necessary in order for people to come for it to be a success. Because what really matters, I mean, everybody likes success, but for ESTP, success is the gold standard. Winning is the gold standard. Nothing else compares. Nothing succeeds quite like success. And how do you get success? You execute, but by itself, you can't say build it and they will come. You got to promote it. And the marketing and promotion is very much what ESTP is about.
Yeah, I could totally see that. The ESTP is like, yeah, wants to keep things exciting in that marketing and promotion. It's kind of fun to be able to sway someone, whether it's to kind of poke at them or to get them really enticed by what you're saying too. It's
Mhm.
fun to see how people can emotionally react differently depending on what you say. So
Oh yeah,
maybe.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, because they have that third function, extroverted feeling that enjoys winning people over.
Mm,
And that for them is such like a huge pleasure when they see that when somebody has come over to join their team, their family, metaphorically, proverbially thinking like Vin Diesel, for example. I don't know Vin Diesel's type, but the whole like the Fast and the Furious franchise is very much like a STP kind of franchise with the cars and the feeling of family and like all of these things. When they win people over, that is just so exciting. They're like, then they want to promote that person, and in doing that, they also are promoting themselves. So it's like a win-win and maybe even win-win-win situation.
yeah, makes sense, yeah. And I think a part of extroverted sensing too likes the win-win-win in successions. Like, how many opportunities can I stack up together to make happen? So,
Yeah. Yeah. What was the phrase that we heard in maybe 2000? God, when was it? 15 or 16? We're going to be winning so much, we're going to be sick of winning.
yep, yep,
Yeah, I mean that's that ESTP dream come true. Like that's
totally.
yeah, and I mean, of course, there are different flavors of ESTP. Some of them will come off as more like the executor style, more serious. Some of them will be more enthusiastic and like do things for fun and bring just like stirring the pot of energy, more of the promoter. Um, some of them figure out the way to win people over is through like a quiet diplomacy
Mm,
or neurolinguistic programming or whatever tools that they discover work. Um but there very much is this like, yeah, these two sides to every type. We've been talking about them. I think when we have two words, see, and I want everyone to hear like how much we were able to talk about each type with just two words, and in such a dynamic way. Because if you go to the movies and or read a book, a fiction book, and there's no tension in the story, like what's going on, like it's not interesting, it's not human. And the same in human beings. And so much, I think, in type we focus on preferences and then shadow, or ego and shadow, or whatever it is, non-preferences. But if we just look at the type and see that even within the type there's an analytic versus holistic tension, or there's an inner me experience and then there's an outer like social experience of my type, and it expresses, and there's a tension between them. Whenever we have the tension principle, wherever we have tension, the intersection of the tension is where a lot of interesting stuff happens.
mm,
So with two words, this does a few things. One is it reminds us there are multiple viewpoints. So when we're thinking about somebody's type and we're like, well, maybe she's an ISFP or maybe not. It's like, well, what are you seeing? If you're just seeing the producing, then you might think this person is ISFJ or even ISTJ or something like that. And if you don't really know them well, or whatever it is, and then you get into the composing part, and you're like, oh wow, there's a whole other side to them that I missed. Or the ISFP might be so focused on the composing part, they think of themselves as INFP until you remind them about the producer part, which is what the INFP doesn't do so much of. And I mean, not at like the rate and volume that
mm.
ISFP does. So by having the two names, it reminds us of these different sides, and the tension and what comes out of the tension.
Yeah, it adds a three-dimensionality to type. And so much appreciated, Dario.
Mhm.
And so if you'd like to take part in a very experiential place where you can understand yourself more deeply and also have more enhanced interpersonal connection, Dario is holding a workshop in nature's beauty. And so you'll be able to study the wisdom of Jung in a beautiful environment. They're even going for massages at one part of this too, optional.
Yeah, there's an INFJ massage therapist who happens to be there who can, yeah, because we're gonna have, so there's 5.5 days, which is like a week, and the first half is like, yeah, we've got some intensive stuff to learn. Jung talked a lot about yoga, active imagination, that kind of thing, and then in the middle of the week there is going to be a break, and the break is an opportunity to go out hiking. There's beautiful weather. It's a beautiful time of year in northern Arizona right now. And during that break, we're going to have some spa time and a little bit of like historic sightseeing for people who want to do that. And then we get back into the Jung for life stuff again. And I say Jung for life because personality will be in every day, but personality was one chapter in one book. And Jung is about so much more than that. And so, what are all of the things that can support it? Um, and food is taken care of, and it's actually not too difficult to get to northern Arizona, and it's really lovely, really beautiful, really lovely time of year at the end of October. I've tried to make it affordable for folks. And just yeah, all of the years that I spent teaching some of these workshops, like the group dynamics and leadership day that we're going to have, like I taught that class for 17 years. So very good idea of like how to make that happen in a very special experience that executives pay a lot of money for. And we're going to do that, and a lot of other stuff that really supports and feeds and sort of orbits around the Jungian sun.
Absolutely. And so it seems like a very once in a lifetime kind of experience. And so, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Dario, for your in depth knowledge on each of the 16 types and giving us the rundown of how it's like to even create these names, too, and the kind of people you've interviewed, because these are based off of people critiquing, refining what you've had to share with Linda Berens. Yeah, so thank you so much. And so, we'll see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye.